Above Altherian, the sky was always a serene, warm, and golden shade. The planet had been a peaceful outpost in the furthest reaches of the Empire for centuries. No one knew anything about it, not even conquerors or errors, but behind its luminous clouds and greases, something boiled. In hushed tones, the cries of 1,000 imprisoned species whispered, "The humans will come," as if the planet were a ghost. They were tortured, bruised, and stricken, yet they said, "One day they will come." Even though it was forbidden, the elders told stories about a race that was born in the inches, raised in conflict, and forged in fire. This species didn't kneel, didn't forge, and, dangerously, didn't forgive. But Earth had been silent a long time ago. The Threx's dominion thought they laughed because there were no messages, no Esohope, and no hope. Legends, they referred to people as or worse. Not out of respect, but because no one anticipated a dead dog to retaliate on the outskirts of Sector 94 in the remains of what was once colony. Dom C, Zarian, Zarian human, and F-human, the dust. His back ripped open lash, and he lay. Tied, the overseer had lashed him till the dust settled because he had attempted to shield a small girl who had dropped a sphere and ions that. He spewed blood. His eyes flickered in pain, and he pulsed. The remembrance of a heartbeat, a recollection of his mother's voice. Kyle, Hikiari ever break you? You are, and you remember. He believed that you are human on Earth and my father's Earth. With Irrit, he hardly noticed, but at that very moment, he far and away beyond the broken wormhole lanes and the corroded galactic lanes, Altherian the twin, stirred in Therian, something stirred when the signal reached the high orbital command and whisper. It was hardly a wiggy back. Earth heard words, but they didn't silence. Instead, they felt the kind of silence that screams for Ione had not stolen its own enslaved. Stolen. Not those enslaved, not those hidden in systems ruled by tyranny. The time it translated, the ancient Minion translated OK on frequency. Pig drone, everybody in the room stood. Help white is a single word. In it wasn't dep-release. It wasn't diplomacy. It was terrifying, releasing terrible thoughts. Combat pods were loaded with lost and recollected pilots who had watched pals being patrolled down by Dominion patrols. Troops who were reared colonies, and thunderous dreadnoughts shouted from the moon's dark side. They wore just black armor that was as dark as night, with a single shoulder and a crimson hand grasped. Meanwhile, Altherian, the overseer, smiled when he pulled Kylepit. He hissed as he lowered his body toward the hole. No one hissed a dotting for you, adding, "Your people died with their spondi." The golden sky above them broke like glass heavens, ringing across the sound. And then there was a scream, not a boom, but the deafening roar of a world being torn apart, and then thunder, which descended like streaking under the black atmosphere, lighting up the sky like a divine storm with anti-air batteries fire too. I didn't respond because he didn't need to. Ill, too sluggish, too unprepared, too cocky. The first pod landed in the labor camp guard's Kerkamps. Shitting a thit, X-guard opened it. Then it opened, letting out Kyle, the first human. He strode out with crossed Caspic and wide, Ragalek eyes instead of posing. He raised his firearm and began to bleed. I'm still bleeding. Began to cry over something he hadn't felt in a year, not because of pain. As additional pods dug into the earth, breaking through the barricades, Shope smoke filled the air, and the sound of paper sirens wailing could be heard from the entrenched Basirans. The Dominion had never anticipated an Ate, and no one had heard from Althron in years. The human soldier who landed first changed shape, but why would they do so when they had governed unopposed for centuries? He pulled Kablood from the blood without hesitation, slinging him over his shoulder as if he weighed nothing. I tried to speak, but the man only said, "Steel, and hard as steel. You're safe now, brother." The word brother hit harder than any explosion. That alien didn't matter, looked half alien, and to this soldier, it didn't matter that he wasn't born a soldier. One detonated. The camp collapsed into anarchy, leaving the prisoners dispersed, ejected, and unclear of whether this was their world or their salvation. The end of the world screaming frantically, frantically, frantically. Their discipline breaking beneath the weight of something they didn't comprehend because the Thraxes had never engaged in combat with humans. They are not guards. Instead, one of them loaded a brute spear with a shock spear and assaulted the human soldier from behind without turning him, derming and firing back. The bullet pierced the guard's skull, causing another pod to slip. A woman in a dark readout emerged from a neighboring door that was hissing open. Her voice crackled over the communications. Extraction risks Alpha T extraction, priority for Eon's rescue. Human blood captives interact with Dominion. Dominion leaves no survivors. Kyle was given a number of medical unomans in light armor as well. They worked quickly, but his wounds injected something icy into his veins, and he continued to move like a flawless machine while the inmates were being herded into safe areas all around him. Every species' blood, not just human blood, was enslaved by the Dominion. The humans who were enslaved were not only here for a short time, they were here forever. Who are they? Croaked. Croaked was having trouble sitting up. One of them halted, and he smiled a little. The ones you call when hope runs out back in the command tower. Okrilla Krell watched the Mani disbelief. She continued, echoing Earth's Shadow said unbelief. He clutched the edge console, trembling. Shaking. This isn't pause. Sib hist. E-content forgotten. Tenade, Hypala, Pales, they're jamming our long-range communications, sir, and they've hit 3 other camps at the same time. Shook? Their technology is decades ahead of projections. When Krell yelled, he turned to face the window and saw that the drop pods were still forming meteors and stars. He said, they won't stop until we're dust. And he was correct. Alt-Ran.ehl, it wasn't a combat. Rather, it was a cleansed dominion, and the armor and their vehicles were compromised, rendering guns useless. Compromised when they arrested the first Threx commander. They engaged in negotiations and aired his confession forcibly or not throughout the sector, where we enslaved the children of Earth. A single human squad could outmaneuver an entire Domplatoon or Latoon. We believed they were gone when we buried them, but they came back. They returned, and they took that transmission's wildfire with them. Ion control was a revolution, but the wildfire 2 worlds is still out of control. The adversaries of the revolution? Warning, a warning. And it was the start of something bigger for every descendant of human blood who scattered asters and the stars. Kyle sat with a rescue blanket thrown around him, gazing up at the sky as the golden clouds moved between the gold warships. If warships battle humanity head-on, the humans arrived because someone asked for assistance and heard Earthcrees, not because they had to. Eltharin's brilliant sky were no longer ablaze with thunder and shouts. With smoke trails from dropping Dominion CR, and Einfire raged across the streak of Senster, it wasn't just anymore. There was still revenge. From the Med TRT, Kyle observed, the sky as it accelerated toward a temper base. While the evac base burnt, it burned, but his mind burned with questions, doubts, anger, and something he dared not feel for years. The human camp was luxurious, efficient, mobile, and heavily armed, and it didn't smell like met blood or blood. Instead, it smelled of oil, sweat, and life. In order to protect his fractured ribs, Kyle went off the transport wearing a borrowed suit. A young cop who was hardly older than him met him at the ramp. Han his flint-like eyes. He followed without inquiry as they passed rows of injured Dominion guards who were Busildalenterture, torture, no killings. Kyle, son of Tanhalf Zirian, confirmed human lineage. As they went, the officer added, your mother was a known Recifighter, and your father was a fighter. You were listed as deceased in the Lost Colonies archive. The humans weren't here to make a statement. They were here to finish something that had started a while ago. Defiance was carried out by a Zirian slave miner. Fiancé, you shouldn't be here since I'm not Sam E. Kyle, she halted there, muttering, in front of a big tent. You are told to look inside, and it was black and humming with empty maps and encryption screens. The man stood in the middle, his arms folded behind his back, and Kale sensed a strange, sensual scuffle. Rollop spine, reverence, terror, amazement. He appeared to be carved from combat, with gray streaks running through his beard and scars along his face like a map of battles past. Kyle, he replied, his voice calm but heavy. I'm General Rovan Vun, welcome home. Home, I've never even seen Earth. Kuskoft snorted. Varen said, you don't need to. Earth isn't just Plane, and that its bloodline in Namamori Ori, a promise. The galaxies believed we were dead because they stole our children because you shouted out. I didn't send signal, or didn't have to. Someone do. That's enough. Cab blinked, his throat tightening. Why now? Why after all the years? Why come back? Vaughn came forward. Battle film captured in real time. Eltharin, we're reclaiming this planet, not just for humans, but for all species. Pieces unboot. This is the mission Shanae Trekkening and the Dominion crushed it. Owning Kyle gazed at pictures.